Welcome, everybody, to this edition of In Conversation With. Today, we are honored to have Dr. D.K. Lee and Dana Landry from the University of Illinois. And we're going to talk about all things hemp. Welcome, D.K. and Dana. Thank you for being here.
Hello, everyone.
So I think, could you just start with a little bit of a brief introduction about who you are and what roles you have with the university?
Hello, everyone. My name is D.K. Lee, professor at the Department of the Crop Science, U of I, Urbana-Champaign. I'm basically agronomist and geneticist, and working with a lot of different specialty crop. Last 16 years in Urbana-Champaign, I've been working with specialty crops, especially focusing on energy crop production and with the sustainable management aspect of it. And basically, we're trying to introduce a new crop into our agricultural landscape to improve the sustainability. And since about 5 years ago, I was told about, getting on to the hemp research. And since that, I think I was very fascinated about the hemp and especially, versatility of the hemp crops, have a lot of different use of it. I mean, basically hemp can produce a fiber and grain, and then those grain and fiber can have a lot of different industrial application. In the meantime, hemp can add the diversity in our agricultural landscape, especially it's a fast growing, short season crop. I think there's a lot of flexibility farmer can adapt to managing about their overall farming practice.
Dana?
Yes, good morning. My name is Dana Landry, and I work for Dr. Lee. I am his field research specialist. I basically am the organizer of all his field trials, but I'm also running part of his hemp research in his program.
Excellent. And I noticed you talked a lot about your lab focusing on energy crops. And I'm interested in how do you see hemp playing in as one of those energy crops, or do you think it's going to be more beneficial for more specific fiber and grain uses?
I mean, when we talk about the energy crop, I should say it's more about the biomass crop. And also, depends on how do you say and how do you see the use of the, different crops and can have a lot of different, application of it. And then fiber itself, I mean, it's all cellulose and then hemicellulose lignin. I mean, my current research is focusing on use those cell wall structural component, which is cellulose, hemicellulose lignin converting to the energy for modern use of it. And also another important aspect of those fiber is actually in the future application. And then currently all the material we are using is coming from petroleum. All the nylon and plastics and polyethylene is all coming from petroleum. But we all know that eventually petroleum will be disappear. I mean, it's a finite source. And we are currently talking about next to 30 to 50 years. I mean, we might not have any more. We still might have some, but it's going to be very expensive. And I think we not have enough petroleum to use, producing the, plastics or any kind of a modern, polymer we are currently using. And also, we all know the plastic is causing the problem. And a lot of people concerning about, contamination, pollution with the plastic, and also recently concerns about the microplastics for human health. I think all those aspects of it, I think a natural fiber has a position for the future industrial application. That's the important part of the fiber, especially hemp producing good fiber. And then two different fiber, bast fiber can, for application of the textile and a plastic reinforcement or a lot of different application. Also inner woody core hard fiber can have a lot of different application, like a construction material, bedding materials, and composite board. I mean, there's a lot of just application of it. Looking at the grain side, I mean modern our ancestor focusing on using the hemp for the fiber, provide more fiber, but the modern and our current industry is looking not only about the fiber, also grain. Grain has very unique characteristics. hemp grain has actually I shouldn't call it hemp grain. It's actually hemp. A seed, it's more akin. It's a different than grain, but we call the grain anyway. A scientific term, it's not really the grain, but anyway, it's a grain, but it has a high protein, which it could have up to 30%, and then also 30% is fatty acid. And those has a really good, just characteristic for the animal feeding and human consumption. I mean, protein obviously very important, just a nutrient for the human and animal. I see the future, once we start to have a larger production, hemp seed can go directly for the animal feeding industry. And then fatty acid, which is also major component of the hemp, the hemp grain, it can have a lot of different application in human, animal feeding and or human consumption too, but more, future as we are looking for, US is looking for, just a sustainable aviation fuel. We are expecting to, use all electricity for the small fleet vehicle, but still large heavy duty or aviation or ocean vessel use the liquid fuel. And those has to come from, crop or natural resource. I think hemp seed oil can be a good, just material as a feedstock for the future biofuel production too. Yeah.
Excellent. Can you please, just for my own education, clarify what you meant about the difference between seed and grain? I always thought of seed as being viable and for sowing, and that grain describes that same seed that's used for post-manufacturing purposes. But I'm guessing I'm scientifically not correct in that, and I would love to know what the actual difference is.
Yeah, seed is in general term any reproductive unit of for the plant producing, and it can be proper propagation actually. But in seed, there's many different types of the seed, like a grain versus a cane. It's very different. Grain is basically pericarp, and the seed coat is fused, and then you can really separate like a corn, right? Corn seed coat and then the pericarp is which is the inner layer is kind of attached together. You can really feel it, right? But like a sunflower seed or pumpkin seed and then the hemp seed is a pericarp and seed coat is just actually separated. You crush it, you can easily separate it out as seed coat.
So
Does
is
that
the
make
heart the actual?
hard shell is just separated out from the just caryopsis is the actual seed unit. Yeah.
Interesting.
You crush the sunflower seed and you can easily feel out that the hard shell is coming off, right? That
Right.
type is called akin. It's not really the grain, actually. It's scientific term. Okay.
Gotcha.
Does that make
So
sense?
so the hemp heart is the grain?
Hemp is not a grain scientifically. It's
Oh,
a
oh, oh, so it's not a grain at
yeah,
all.
yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, a lot of producer and farmer, we just call the seed we are producing just round shape of seed. We just in generally call the grain.
Gotcha. Okay,
But
thank you for that. Um, so how did you get interested in hemp? I know you said, about 5 years ago, and obviously with the legalization, it opened up more opportunities to do the research. But when did you first learn about hemp and what about it intrigued you?
Well, actually, my relationship with the hemp or learn, I mean, I knew hemp even a while back, maybe 45 years ago, actually. And in the same, I mean, I'm from South Korea. I mean, until 1970, and in South Korea, still they cultivated hemp as a major fiber source. I mean, I remember my grandma, and back in my house, it just we do have a field, and he planted the hemp and he harvested she harvested it, she processed it, she made a cloth. Just basically that was just all homemade, just the domestic just processing to producing all the textile. That's what I knew it. But I think it's just about the same time US just abandoning about the hemp as the marijuana tax act in 1972 or 74, where in those time period, I think the Korean government also followed the US rule and they just banned all the hemp production. And then not only about the marijuana, also hemp hemp using for the fiber production. That's what I learned. And then I've completely forgot about it. And then in 2019, and my colleague was started thinking about, because I'm the one doing a lot of specialty crop in the department. I'm always interested in new crop. I've done a lot of different crops. I mean, a lot of native grass for the energy production and the mushroom production, and or some native flower like a butterfly milkweed and stuff. But all those is just minor component in agricultural, Midwestern agriculture. But I thought in hemp might be interesting crop, especially their versatility. I mean, this flexibility and the different target, product. I mean, can easily fit it into the agricultural landscape too. It's actually just one, Erica, just one good example, interest, and we are all concerning about the food production, right? Food security is important concern, and then the carbohydrate production is a very important aspect of it for the future, just the food security. And then the one crop we are growing for the human consumption, directed human consumption, is a winter wheat. And a winter wheat, cultivation in the Midwestern is always challenged, especially in northern half of the Illinois, because we typically plant winter wheat in the end of September. We're harvesting 1st of July, somewhere around the July. And those winter wheat production is hard to fit it into the corn soybean rotation, actually, because the timing doesn't fit it well. But if we plant the hemp for the fiber especially, and then we could plant, based on my experience the last couple of years, we can plant the hemp maybe April or early May, and then we can harvest a good biomass for the fiber in mid or late August, actually. That opens up nice window for the winter wheat planting in the mid-September. Or we are currently working on a winter wheat harvesting done in late June and early July. Typically, northern Illinois, northern part of the Midwest, it's kind of a little too late for the planting the soybean, actually. But what I learned is actually hemp. We planted hemp in July 7, actually. It still can have a good crop for the grain production. Basically, what I'm saying is that fiber can be harvested early, opens up window for the winter wheat planting or cover crop. We all, like to have a cover crop
Yes.
to, just to minimize any negative impact over the, off the season. And those are given, and also double cropping with the winter wheat, that's good. Or after winter wheat harvesting, we can plant, grain hemp, mainly focusing on grain. And that gives us nice flexibility too, actually. Obviously, corn soybean rotation, very simple, easy, but we concerns about them sustainability. And then adding in hemp in those, simple and a two crop rotation to the another crop might be bring a lot more interesting aspect of it, sustainability and flexibility too, actually.
And probably soil health ultimately as well, which I
Yeah,
think
I
we're.
believe. Mhm.
So what about you, Dana? What got you into hemp and what do you find most interesting?
So, actually, DK or Dr. Lee got me into hemp. I started working for him, in 22, I think, in October.
Yeah, yeah.
And my first season here, he was like, "We're going to grow this crop," and so that was my first experience with hemp was last summer, and it was all different compared to the crops that I'm used to doing research on. And it's honestly, it's pretty interesting all the things that you can get off of this one crop. Um, like he said, the grains you can get like the oils and the lotions and you can even eat the grain and stuff like that. And then the fiber you can make rope and um, like construction materials. Like we were at an event the other day where they were actually building a building with hemp fibers, and it was pretty cool to see that. So it's just like the sustainability aspect and just it's just a really cool crop to me.
Yeah, I agree. And just like with the whole kind of seed and grain distinction, it's taken me a really long time to wrap my mind around thinking of the herd or the shives as a fiber. Like
Yes.
when I look at like a pine chip or something, it doesn't like immediately pop in my head that that's a fiber, right? And it's so that kind of aspect's been super interesting to me as and it's I've been doing this for about 10 years now, and I learn new things every day, and I love it. And
Yeah.
speaking of learning, I understand that you guys offer a certificate program. Do you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting aspect of America. I mean, as a scientist and a researcher, just hemp was very interesting crop, even though I knew the crop as from my early childhood, but I didn't know anything about any plant biology, anything like that in botanical terms and everything. And that took a while to get into it because of the hemp, it's abandoned and it completely eliminated from scientific community. There's not a lot of evidence was there. And then, I mean, I'm trying to making some educational material. I have a hard time in myself. I mean, especially hemp is a very different crop than other crop, like a dioecious nature is, just all those. It's very interesting, a lot of learning there. And also,
Let me just stop you right there and explain to our audience what dioecious means, because not everybody's going to be familiar with that term.
yeah, and a lot, I mean, dioecious, I mean, the hemp is typical of I mean, just 99% naturally plants occur as a dioecious, which means a male and female plant is separate. Basically, you can recognize them, this is a male plant and this is a female plant. As a female plant only has a female structure, a reproductive unit, and a male plant only has a male structural, the reproduction unit, which is a we call the staminated, flower. The male is a pistillate, which is only that the female is a pistillate. They only have the stigma, which is stigma is just the organ capturing the pollen coming from the male.
Mm-hmm.
Very not common, not unusual, like the ginkgo trees, the dioecious, and also spinach is dioecious. But a lot of crop we are growing in is monoecious. Monoecious has, I mean, one plant has both the male flower and female flower. Like a corn is a typical example. I mean, very obvious, right? Tassel, top portion of the plant is a male reproductive, unit. And then the ear with the silk is the individual silk we call the stigma. Those is the one actually the female reproductive unit. Those two separate flowers in one plant with monoecious is actually. In monoecious, it also has a hermaphrodite. Some species has a hermaphroditic flower, which is one flower has both. And then female and male structure too, unit also, like a cucumber, right? Cucumber or tomato, things like that. No, cucumber is actually monoecious actually. And then pumpkin and zucchini is all monoecious because you see the flower has a little baby fruit there. That's the female. Flower doesn't have a bit, that only has a pollen staminated unit. That's the male flowers section. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt you
that's
there.
fine. That's very, very interesting. That makes things easy and things difficult too, in terms of the agronomy too, is actually.
Yeah, it was one of the things that as we've been advocating for the Industrial Hemp Act, which would allow for relaxed regulations,
Mhm.
the visually being able to pretty easily tell if you have the presence of male plants in a field is one of the
Mhm.
things that I think, well, I know will make visual inspections a viable options for a lot of people. Because like when you walk into a field, if you see all female plants and they're short and bushy and
Mhm.
full of flowers, like odds are that's not a fiber
Yeah,
and grain
yeah,
crop, right?
yeah.
So like it is one of those things that's a characteristic of the plant that helps make our case for why we don't need the same regulatory framework for true industrial hemp that's grown for fiber or grain versus
Right.
the cannabinoid hemp
Mm.
that's purpose grown for
I think
cannabinoids.
those education really need to be done, and also people need to understand. I think a lot of people still not understanding how flower production versus hemp for the fiber and grain production be done. I think that's very important aspect of it, but a lot of misunderstanding of those the biology of the hemp plant. All right.
Absolutely. So I
Over
interrupted you talking about your certificate program.
Well, basically, that comes, those education pieces. As a scientist, I have a hard time to understand overall general structure and biology and physiology, all the reproductions. And I can see that, common public people even have a hard time because no right information. And a lot of time people rely on YouTube video, which is YouTube video generated by and not, I'm not cutting down, but those people have a great knowledge, but their knowledge is not scientific based. And then also there's a lot of anecdotal information they have. That's why. And obviously, since 2019, recreational use of the, just the cannabis as a flower, it's been a very much is common too. And a young generation, even college students, all those have access to the product. And then I was thinking, wow, maybe this is a good time. We need to think about educating people, for better understanding and a better use of the product, and also see any opportunity, workforce education and training of the workforce for the future industry, whether it's a flower industries or whether it is for, just hemp, industrial hemp aspect of an actual farming practice too. With that, I started my certificate program as an online program director. I get a lot of requests about, I'm always interacting with the student in off campus because of continuing education, and I'm managing department, the online master program, other certificate program. And we already had, crop certificate, horticulture certificate, and also sustainable human food production certificate I'm managing. And then people was asking, can we have, certificate in the cannabis production and management? That's why I started, wow, since I'm doing the research, maybe it's a good time to thinking about. And then I was thinking, and then initially I offered one course, but very general foundational information about the cannabis. I mean, when I said the cannabis, I'm not differentiating whether, Erica, I'm assuming it's okay to use the term marijuana, okay?
Yes.
And marijuana is all legal term, especially in the U.S. and many other countries too. But it's all cannabis sativa, one species we are talking about. Depends on how to use and which product you are harvesting. We differentiate, the marijuana versus hemp. Just assuming a lot of audience in here understand hemp difference between hemp versus marijuana. Just to reiterate and emphasize, by DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, the definition, plant, any portion of the plant producing more than 0.3% total cannabinoid, total THC, delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol. And then that we call the legally marijuana, okay? To become a legal crop in hemp, THC concentration has to be less than 0.3%. And then starting from that point is that people need to understand that why one plant we call the marijuana, one plant we can call, hemp. And another very interesting aspect, and people still not understand the difference of THC versus CBD or delta 8 THC or overall in cannabinoid.
Yeah.
And those all things very important aspect of it. Understanding is very important.
Yeah, I think it's also important too to have that distinction, which we should be getting in this upcoming farm bill, of a legal definition of industrial hemp, which is very so cannabis that's grown for, high THC cannabis for adult use versus cannabis that's grown for CBD or other. Well, now we do have intoxicating cannabinoids coming out of hemp, but that's a different controversy in and of itself. But those two plants are visually indistinguishable from each other. In that scenario, the THC level is that arbitrary definition that separates the two types of plants. Whereas industrial hemp, for fiber or grain, those are different varietals that are planted very differently. They look different, and their end purposes are very different. And I think the industrial hemp side of the industry has suffered from the conflagens of high THC hemp and cannabinoid hemp in general, which is something that we're working towards separating, not only by legal definition, but to your point, the need for education for people to start understanding what the differences are. And in many ways, it's one plant, right? It's all cannabis sativa. It's all valuable. It all has its place, and it's it's discouraging that we have to devote so much time and attention to, splicing and dicing and separating because there's these arbitrary fears around certain aspects of certain types of this plant. Where
Mhm.
in my view, it's all a plant. It's all good. We can do so many good things with it. But anyway, I'm sorry, I digress.
No. I thank you so much for the clarifying. I mean, that is a very important aspect that we need to appreciate, and it's just all cannabis sativa linnaeus, which is all one species, and depends on which target product, which might be legal term, it might be a little different, but we need to respect the as those difference in all. I think it's a very important thing to understand it, and then same time, and then there's a lot of user there. I mean, a lot of user which not, I mean, necessarily they understand what they're using actually too. So actually that's another aspect of keep educating this is our students too. You need to understand what you're getting is, you know, at least what you're getting, right? I mean, we need to look at how to read the labels and everything, and I think that's a very important aspect of it. But more than anything, I try to educate the people and an overall aspect of the hemp in the cannabis sativa, whether you are interested in flower, whether even high THC flower or non-high THC cannabinoid, flower or hemp as industrial hemp as for the fiber and grain production. I think those are the important aspect of it. And a lot of people is actually, I would say it's typical of my students is half more interested in the flower side, and the other half is just looking at future opportunities, hemp as a field crop. I think that's the looking at. And then I mean there are a lot of students coming to the class as a personal interest, but they just looking at just the opportunity in the future as a just their job seeking aspect of it too. That's why we launched the certificate program in 2020. I think 2022, and then in the fall, I start to teach you the first class of the cannabis classification and management, and then everybody got shocked. Well, DK, I always hear about the indica type and sativa type. Well, no, okay, just we talked about the botanical, background, why people started differentiating the indica and sativa types, and just a history aspect of it, but it's very interesting, people not understand, and then this new to them, new to a lot of people, but we've been dealing with this over 10,000 years based on the histories, and then this is a very important crop, being an important crop in many different aspects. That's the about it in the workforce training, and also providing some general education about the cannabis. That's why we started the certificate program. We're getting a lot of students every semester, and we start, just to award a lot of certificate per student, as many students actually now working, having the job in that industries too, it's actually.
Excellent. I
I,
love to hear that.
Mhm.
I actually have been taking some of these courses and it has helped me out a lot with being over a lot of his hemp research. It's very detailed, and if anybody wants to get into it and learn more, I would suggest them taking uh this certificate classes.
Yeah, I have a hard time. I had a hard time to put the right information, right? Because I'm just looking at the even taxonomy classification. There's a lot of different way to classify it, and I have a hard time which one is actually correct. It's based on, science. I think that was the main things. Yeah.
So, well, we were definitely going to be providing a link for anybody who's interested in exploring the certificate program a little bit more. But with that, let's move into talking about like the research that you're doing right now, and what you're learning from it, and how long you've been doing it, and kind of a little bit more details on the actual research.
Yeah, Erica, I mean, hemp is the old crop, but since the 1970s, which is beginning of the modern agricultural farming practices, it discontinues. It's obviously we don't have a genetic material, we don't have a modern management and tools for the hemp. I think that brings up in the just it brings our into the research. And first of all, from 2019, we started the variety evaluation. Obviously, one most important thing is you need to have a seed to put in the ground, right? That's the beginning of the crop. But thing is, we don't have information. I mean, European countries and Canadian country, they do have information. They do have own genetic material to grow, being grown for the fiber production or seed production, but we don't have any of those information. And then a lot of hemp, and then from that point, we just imported and planted it. But as the people understand, hemp is a photoperiod sensitive crop. And but which I disagree kind of, but the photoperiod sensitive crop means the plant, the cultivar coming from very northern latitude, which is Champaign, Illinois, and 40-degree north latitude. You got the seed from 45-degree, north latitude. It's coming in here. It doesn't work. They just flower so early. Maybe plant, maybe even 1 or 2 feet tall, they flower, which is not fitted in this environment because their day length or growing season is completely different. That's messing up a lot of just aspect of the farming. That's why we start evaluating the genetic material from the European country and in Canada or some in China. And then we see a lot of variation. Some start to flowering in June. Some never flower in September, right? There's a lot of variation. Obviously, we need to find the right cultivar, for for this region. That's why the variety evaluation is very important. Same time, I mean, obviously, those genetic materials are developed for those country, not for our region, right? That's why the research also focusing on, developing the line cultivar fitted in this environment. With that, I used a lot of CBD types of the plant and the hemp plant, which doesn't have a legal binding. And also I collected a lot of federal hemp from Illinois. Those federal hemp is actually escaped from the World War II. And just temporarily, U.S. government is actually released, just a cultivation of hemp for the World War II and I think everyone watched the Hemp for Victory. Then, we provide hemp fiber for the Navy, U.S. Navy. But still a lot of hemp and federal hemp's growing out there. We collected those seeds and we made a hybrid between those CBD types of plant and then federal, and it's been very just successful. I think we in the near future we can introduce a lot of different cultivar for whether it's for the fiber or whether it's for the grain production. I think it's coming, and during the open house we're going to introduce a lot of different experimental line. That's the one aspect of especially genetic side in variety evaluation and in genetic improvement. And also, as I mentioned, since we stopped farming in 1970, we don't have a really good mean of the management aspect of it. No tools, no equipment, and fitted into hemp planting and harvesting with the management, all aspect of it. Right. That's why we trying to kind of redesign or just updating, improving the old technology, using the modern equipment to see how farmer can actually plant it right, and then managing weed and, just harvesting grain and fiber. That's what all the agronomy trials with Dana doing that. Dana can go detail about all the variety trials and agronomy trials, but we always thinking is nitrogen management is important because the fiber versus the grain is different. Also, planting time is critical, whether you're looking for the fiber or grain production or seeding densities wise. All those is a very important aspect of it. And since we are working on 2 different target product, or, the 2 target product that we come in from one harvesting, that's what makes things a little difficult. And in fiber production, we are only harvesting it right at the antithesis, or the fiber harvesting is very different from the grain harvesting. Or you just focusing on grain, or you are focusing on both grain and fiber at the end of the season harvesting. And those make all different, just the management practice. That's what we are practicing, or we try to build the information. And as soon as the farmer is ready, okay, I'm ready to go. I want to plant, and then here's the information, you can use it. That's what we're doing. And then Dana, you can talk about the herbicide aspect of it. We don't have a lot of option for the weed control right now. And that's something we also working on too.
So this year, we have been putting down pre-herbicides called sonolin, and it works. It works pretty well for the most part, but depending on the type of hemp are growing. Some grow a little slower, and the weeds just sometimes win the race in those plots. So we have to clear those plots out. Weeds are an ongoing battle with hemp because you can't really use herbicides after you plant because a lot of the broadleaf herbicides will just severely damage or just kill your whole plot. That's really the main problem we have. And we've had some insects come. We've had quite a few. I have a lot of photos if you want me to send some photos to you that I have seen in the field. Um, and some of those will cause damage as well. And it's kind of hard to drive through hemp, if you can imagine. So we can't really apply insecticides in our stuff. I'm sure farmers do. It's just hemp is very finicky and hard to apply any type of pesticides post emergence, really.
We're also limited with the ones that the EPA has actually
Yes.
approved for use as well. And that's something that I expect will see change over time to make things easier. But
Yes.
yeah,
I
I
mean,
can.
we've seen some come out in the past couple years that have been approved for hemp. So it's exciting. More and more things are coming out to help hopefully help um with the industry and getting more people to grow hemp.
Yeah, just adding another thing that Erica, and with the control is any crop, with the control is a big challenge,
Yeah.
especially hemp too. So because it's broadly, it's non-GMO. I mean, and oftentimes hemp we are fighting with just water hemp weed, the pigweed is amaranth, and that's they germinating same time, and and they go much faster, and that's why another important aspect of the seed quality. If seed quality is
Mhm.
not good, I think that will really make it difficult for the weed management. And if you have a seed that has a good quality aspect of it, and you know the germination, I think hemp typically germinate in 5 days, assuming soil moisture there. I mean, we see that some of them even coming in a 3 day. If the soil has a good moisture, temperature, air temperature between 70 to 80 degree, they can come in out of the in 3 day. But most of the seed, quality seed, you can start to see they coming out of the ground in 5 day, which is good. Then they can outcompete with easily with any annual weed coming. As also helping with the Sanolin like a pre-emergent. I think Sanolin just approved by the EPA. We can use it legally for the hemp. But with that, we don't have much the problem in terms of the weed management. But if seed quality is not good, or you have information not quite right, like the seed back tag information said you have 90% germination, and then you calculate the calculate the seeding rate based on 90%, you put down, well, they only germinate in 60%. Then that's the problem. That's why our research is always recommend, you do germ test by yourself again.
Yeah.
And then based on germ tested what you are sure about it. Another important aspect of the planting is, a lot of time people, yeah, I planted 40 pounds per acre. Yeah, I planted 25 pounds per acre. Obviously, its seeding rates are different based on fiber production or seed production, but people not understanding hemp seed size is all different. Even same cultivar, seed size is different batch to batch, year to the year. Like
Yeah.
this year, we have one variety. I planted the same variety last year and this year. Last year, the variety comes with a nice good seed, like a 18, 20 gram per thousand seed, but this year less than 14 gram per thousand seed, which means the seed size is hugely different. Assuming you expect the seed size is smaller, most of the case the seed quality is not good. Their germination is also delayed, or germination is really poor. That those aspects has to be in mind, and then you can put right seed amount in the soil. I strongly recommend the people not using the pound per acre. Just to do some calculation, and then how many seed you put into what's the seeding rate, not the pound acre, seed per acre is more important to have all aspect of production aspect and the weed management, everything too is actually. And I learned that all your planting is actually better for the fiber production. And then even we planted in April 15, typically that's really, we consider it really early. And then we could have a frost too. Actually, we had the two
We
frost
did. Mm-hmm.
for April 15, but hemp is very, cold tolerant. They don't get bothered. Even though their growth is slow, but once temperatures warm up, they take it off and they go much faster than water hemp. And we didn't have much problem with the weed management in all your plant. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, see, I just learned something else new again today. So thank you for that. I never gave that a thought that the seeds themselves are different year to year, and that just a flat pound per acre is not the smartest way to calculate what your rate is. That's great information. And I think this also highlights too, like how important the regionality aspect of this is, because even with like the certified seed varietals that are out there, they haven't all been tested in all areas of the country. And it is wildly different from region to region, and everything's going to have to kind of be adapted to take that into consideration. And so research like what you're doing is so vitally important, not only there, but we need to have people doing that everywhere across this country to figure out what are the best cultivars, and best practices for different soil types, different climates, different latitudes, and all of that stuff. But going back to something you said at the beginning, like the whole idea of feral hemp has always been super fascinating to me. And I'm curious as if you have any knowledge or thoughts about, so for that feral hemp that started in, that World War II effort and the whole Hemp for Victory campaign, where did the US government get that grain? And over the last, 80 years or whatever, have you seen the feral hemp adapt itself to the region and mutate over time? And are those pretty stable genetics that you're able to start with? Are they open source that you're kind of free to do whatever you want with because nobody owns them? I just find the whole feral hemp thing super fascinating.
Yeah, it is very careful. I need to be very careful about the legal ownership stuff because there's a reason. I'm gonna go back to the history of it a little bit as I know it, but legal aspect of it, who owns it? A lot of hemp is actually falling in. They basically federal hemp been grown in Illinois and Wisconsin, Kentucky. Those is basically they domesticated over 50 years. They just settles in this. They changed their characteristic big time. I can come back to that. But thing is that, now you don't see the hemp and the federal hemp in the field, right? And because they always cultivate it and then they tilled it and then they crop planted. But where you see the hemp mostly in the ditch area or
It's
abandoned area.
weed.
Yeah, ditch weed and then fencing area. And I technically who owns, I think the landowner owns it, and a lot of roadside and the Department of Transportation owns that material. I get the permission that I have to get the permission to them. And also, the abandoned area. One example, I found a big, gigantic, feral hemp grown right next to the swine production area, basically. And their swine production, they just constantly dump, manures and the stuff, but then the owner didn't care. Oh yeah, Dr. Lee, you get it, whatever you want. You got to be careful on it. I mean, once I start to make a good genetic, they might be interesting. Oh, well, come on, wait a minute. That's just fine. Those aspects of it, but those, I mean, just very unclear who owns it. But my kind of viewpoint. I mean, just I'm thinking it's all based on who owns the land. Just that's what it is. That you have to be careful about it, collecting the feral hemp. Not
Right,
that's important aspect. But those are legal ownership thing is just completely different.
right.
Conversation. I don't want to touch that too far. But thing is that where does it start to that the feral hemp start? I strongly believe it's coming from Victory, no, the World War II, a lot of domestication happened that time. And and based on historical migration of the seed, which is coming more than likely coming from the China, some of the seed source coming from the China. But unclear thing is just that, if those things coming from China, lips should have been wide. Leaflet should be wide. Erica, we typically call the sativa type. It's this narrow leaflet, right? Very skinny leaflet, we call the sativa type. Those narrow leaf hemp type typically sells in more European country. Okay. But based on the genetic study, the migration of the hemp cultivar, basically a lot of later, assuming after 1950, it cultivar moving from actually China too, is actually. It just, we don't have a real good evidence. I know Dr. Shelby from the Wisconsin, she does a lot of genetic research and they collected a lot of feral hemp. They might have a better idea eventually where this originated, but just want to talk about a little bit about the characteristics of phenotype about those feral hemp. And obviously, when we differentiate the, wild type versus domesticated cultivar, and the seed size is very important. Typically domesticated cultivar seed is much bigger. Feral types of wild type seed is much smaller. And also, feral seed has a little long abscission zone, well developed the abscission zone. They easily shatter because it's in Mother Nature. They want to disperse their progeny. But the domesticated seed types has really fully developed abscission zone like a seed. There's no elongation on tip of the seed. They directly attach onto the stem. They don't shatter very well. But feral has a little long elongation. They easily shatter. That's the nature. And then seed size is smaller because the bigger doesn't necessary for the wild type, right? But in domesticated the cultivar, we like to work with the bigger seed. It's a lot easier to deal with it. That typically wild type seed, it's much smaller. And also they oftentimes they do have a camouflage outside the shell has a lot of pattern. It's darkened patterns in kind of a, just like a, I don't know, mottled cover, which is coming from the perianth of one of the flower structure. But that's the typical of those. And one problem with the feral is the seed is very small, and also their dormancy is 10 to high. And high dormancy is not good for the agronomy, right? Because we plant it, I like to see it coming in 5 days, but if we have high dormancy, they get delayed the dormancy, and then we just start to come. The reason is, I think, very simple, because domesticated the seed in original, in the beginning, they domesticated, the naturalized, and right? They produce seed and they drop it. In the fall, hemp seed drop in the Midwest, typically September and October. And that September, October is nice warm weather with good moisture in the ground, right? Seeds start to germinating, right?
Right.
They got killed by the winter, right? Many years of those cycle basically eliminated, seed doesn't have any dormancies actually.
Interesting.
Yeah, now all the seed they survive because they should not germinate in the fall. They germinate in the spring, and those cycle keep natural selection is all naturalized. Seed has high dormancy in there,
That's
and
amazing.
that's the characteristic I see. A lot of farrow hemp germinating is very much delayed. Yeah.
That is super fascinating. And also I'm curious too, like obviously back during, Hemp for Victory days, we didn't have scientific methods of testing THC and they weren't like super worried about that.
Mhm.
Are those feral strains compliant against modern standards of THC testing?
Yes or no? We 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 collected the feral hemp like 100 different one, and we fingerprinted the DNA whether they have a THC gene on it. Yes, they do, and not all. Some of them has it. They do have a THC synthesis gene they can produce, and some of my colleague from industry breeder, he said a lot of Chinese fiber has a high THC. That is
That's still
true.
true today too.
Yeah, you heard about the Yuma and Pumas and those that has a high THC concentrations there because those Landrys, they never really concerns about the THC concentration. They just pass down to the generation and they just keep growing there. I think that it's very much the possible too.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. And it's also another reason why we've been such strong advocates for like the Industrial Hemp Act and some of the provisions in there. Because if your end use is fiber, like who cares? There's no THC in the fiber. If
No.
you're not harvesting flower, like there we shouldn't have that same kind of arbitrary 0.3% when some of the better yields are going to come from some of the more robust plants that have a higher probability of being just a little bit hot. And we're not talking like marijuana level hot. We're
No, no,
talking
no,
about,
no.
a couple tenths of a percent.
And then I had a conversation with the USDA folks too, but the thing is they understand well. And you harvest the plant for the fiber, which is right at the flowering time, which is plant typically not accumulating the THC. THC accumulation beyond of the flowering, right? And that's the thing. And also, obviously, fiber production field, you see the male. And you see the male means all flowers get pollinated, fertilized, and then the plant is focusing in for the seed production, not for the cannabinoid production. That's why, you grown for the fiber, why we need to worry about the THC. You grown for the grain, yeah, you see the male plant, that means you're not going to harvest that flower. Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's exactly the points that we've been making. And I feel like we're finally getting there and we should see those
yeah.
changes in the upcoming farm bill.
Mhm.
So I could talk to you guys like literally forever. This has been super fascinating and definitely want to have some links to some more of your research. We're definitely going to have a link to your open house event, which I'm very much looking forward to. And would love to have further conversations down the road, whenever you guys would like. You're welcome back anytime. This type of education is super important and super appreciate you both taking the time to be here today.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
Just one last thing, Erica. Typical of my research is really focusing on the publication of the scientific papers and stuff. But hemp, we have been really focusing on more generating practical information, for the future adaptation. That's why this is even 30 years of the hemp research open house. I think this year's the one of the best year in a sense, and then we have many trial. And purposefully, we put all the trial near proximity and then people walk into it. I think it not, I think a lot easier to looking at than actually hearing from, listening from people talking about. I think I strongly encourage anybody interested in hemp production and come to the research open house. There's a, different, you can see that, wow, this is the variety. I'm thinking about, wow, this is much shorter than I was thinking, and then all those aspects of, I think it's just a practical aspect of, the growing in hemp. I think that will opens up the eye. We are expecting to have many people and we put together the program. I think we are finalizing the schedule. I think it will be posted in today. I think it's going to be fun and going to be a lot of learning about it.
This type of work, like I said, it's vitally important and we want to be supportive of it in any way that we can. So anybody that's listening, like if you're close by, like register for this open house, check out the certificate program, and support these great people and the important work that they're doing. So thank you everyone for joining us for this edition of In Conversation With, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Bye.
Bye.